Executive Bellone, Suffolk County, County Executive Mangano, CEO and Chairman of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and General Patrick Murphy of the New York National Guard, and Head of the Division of Military and Naval Affairs, along, of course, with the Governor. We are facing a statewide event. The Governor's ordered a statewide response to this event. We're beginning our day here in the metropolitan area. After this briefing this morning, the Governor will be heading to upstate New York, particularly to areas that were vulnerable during Hurricane Irene and Tropical Storm Lee. The Governor will be visiting the Catskills, the Southern Tier, the North Country, and the Mohawk Valley, which were all significantly impacted, and where the state response in conjunction with local officials is very significant right now. Latest information that we have from the Weather Service indicates this continues to be a very serious weather event, wind and water being the major concerns. This morning, the National Weather Service increased their storm surge prediction peak from 4 to 8 feet surge to a 5 to 10 foot surge, which would be record levels. Also of long duration, beginning tomorrow in the midday and running through Tuesday. So they have put a coastal flood warning in effect. That's a major concern. Second is the high wind warning issued by the National Weather Service, 35 to 50 mile an hour sustained winds for a lengthy period of time, again, beginning most likely in a serious way by Monday midday and going through Tuesday. The Governor has ordered a very significant and dramatic state response. We've been working very closely with local officials throughout the state, but especially here on Long Island, and we're going to talk about some of those efforts this morning, and the Governor will make an announcement concerning our further steps to prepare for the storm. So with that, I'd like to introduce County Executive Bellone.
Thank you very much, Howard. And first, I want to thank the Governor for the incredible response that we have received here. We had an example of this earlier this year with the Suffolk County brush fires, and the cooperation and coordination between New York State and our local governments was absolutely incredible, and we're seeing that kind of response today. And it's important because this is a very serious storm, and we're taking it very seriously in Suffolk County. We began preparations on Wednesday. Our Emergency Operations Center has been open since Friday. Will be open full-time throughout this event. We announced in cooperation with the towns of Islip and Brookhaven the mandatory evacuation of Fire Island, which will end 2 p.m. today. We're seeking to have it completely evacuated by 2 p.m. today. We've issued a state of emergency in the county. Following the complete evacuation of Fire Island, LIPA will be de-energizing because the concern is without emergency personnel on Fire Island is for fires and not having the ability to respond. Suffolk County parks will be closed as of 6 p.m. today. This evening, all campers were required to leave the parks as of 12 noon. We've completed a pre-storm survey of our coastline. That's one of our major concerns, obviously, with the storm and the surge and the wind is erosion. And we have communicated all preparedness information to our first responders, fire, EMS, and law enforcement. We are coordinating with 50 different agencies at our EOC. And the major issue for Suffolk County residents now in the next 24 hours is the decision to shelter in place or to go to a neighbor's house or go to a relative's house that is in a non-flood zone area. We are urging residents who are in flood zone areas or areas that are prone to flooding to consider taking alternative measures and preparing for that right now, because the decisions need to be made today on doing that. Again, I want to thank the Governor for all his support and his efforts to support us during this crisis. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
I'll turn it over to Nassau County Executive Ed Mangano, and thank you for hosting us here today.
Thank you, Steve, and I want to certainly thank Governor Cuomo. We have had an unprecedented level of cooperation here from New York State. The Governor and his office and the Homeland Security and Office of Emergency Management has made certain that we have additional assets which are already in place and being put in place so we can prepare for what the National Weather Service has predicted to be a record-breaking storm surge that will certainly affect Long Island. Accordingly, Nassau County is in a state of emergency. We had mandatory evacuations for the Barrier Island Long Beach Hospital and the nursing homes were already mandatorily evacuated. There's a voluntary evacuation for all those that reside in a flood zone. And you should all know, if you're residents, if you reside in a flood zone. As a rule of thumb, if you were affected in Hurricane Irene, or you were near someone that was affected in Hurricane Irene, you should immediately begin enacting your family and friends plan and move out to a family or friend that lives in a higher zone. That we're asking that you do immediately. We have shelters set up at Nassau Community College, Levittown Memorial High School, and Locust Valley High School. They will all be fully operational by 1 p.m. today. There are staff on premises there now, and they will continue to open up. That is our Tier 1 level of sheltering. We will have additional shelters announced throughout the day if this weather event continues on its present track. Again, we urge you to shelter with a family or friend member. You will be much more comfortable. You can expect severe tidal surge. The National Weather Service, again, is predicting a very prolonged coastal storm event that will take us from very late Sunday night to the wee hours of Tuesday morning. So now's the time to prepare again. The weather is nice, the stores are open, the roads are passable. Please heed this advice. Get your emergency go kits ready and be prepared to move. We may have further announcements today with further directions. Please stay in touch with your local media. And once again, I want to thank the governor for joining with us here in person. Unprecedented each storm. He's made his way to Nassau County to make certain that efforts are being coordinated properly. We thank him for his leadership and his partnership. Thank you, Governor Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, thank you. First, I'd like to thank Howard Glazer, the Director of State Operations, for all the good work his team has been doing statewide. Joseph Lhota, who has been doing a great job at the MTA, and General Murphy, who commands the State National Guard, is here with us today, and I'd like to thank him. To the County Executive, Steve Bellone, and Ed Mangano, the Suffolk County Executive and Nassau County Executive. So much of one of these efforts is about coordination and preparation, and governments working together and making sure that our approach is seamless. We've had an extraordinary relationship with Suffolk County and Nassau County on many levels, but this is when it really counts, and this is when the rubber meets the road. And we've had a great couple of days preparing for this situation, and I want to thank them both for their leadership and their collegiality during this difficult time. I'd also like to thank the federal officials who have been very responsive to the needs of this state. We've been working with FEMA for several days, and I want to thank them for their assistance. We've been monitoring the storm, as have most people. The storm is still coming, as you heard, and now it is time to take action. You know, a situation like this, you don't want to be overly panicked and overly prepared, but you want to be prudent. You want to do what's necessary. And as the storm has not changed course, and the storm is still heading to this general area, we don't know where exactly, but we think it's prudent now to take additional action. So today I am announcing that the MTA will suspend bus, subway, and commuter rail service at 7 p.m. this evening. That includes the New York City subway system, bus, and all Metro North and Long Island Railroad service. The New York City subway system last service will be at 7 o'clock, trains leaving at 7 o'clock this evening, and bus at 9 o'clock tonight. Metro North and LIRR, the final trains, will be leaving 7 o'clock tonight. New York City Transit, Metro North, and LIRR will cross-honor each other's passes to facilitate travel today. I have spoken with Mayor Bloomberg repeatedly over the past several days, and if he is considering evacuating parts of New York City, if the mayor makes that determination, the MTA will be available to assist in that evacuation and still continue their plans to suspend service at 7 o'clock today. The suspension of the service is for three main reasons. Number one, it is unsafe to operate the trains in high winds. Second, we don't want the equipment damaged, and trains are designed to deal with a lot of tough duty. They are not intended to be submerged, and we don't want to damage the equipment and then have a real problem getting the system up and running. And thirdly, we don't want to encourage people being up and about. We want people staying in their homes, be prepared, and stay at home. The bridges and tunnels will be closed on a case-by-case basis if that arises. At this time, we do not anticipate closing the airports, but it's, I would advise strongly that you check with your carrier before going to the airport. We will also be activating the National Guard. 1,100 National Guard will be deployed, 400 here on Long Island, 200 in New York City. The National Guard will also be calling up relevant equipment, including 900 high-axle trucks and Humvees, 11 Black Hawk helicopters, 2 Lakota light utility helicopters, a C-130, and we have more equipment and more troops if need be. We've been in contact with the utility companies all across the state. We've been in contact with other states to have their utility crews on standby if we need them to do repair work. When it comes to LIPA here on Long Island, which has had issues in the past in responding to consumer complaints and getting service back up, we're going to have the LIPA response monitored by the state chairman of the Public Service Commission. The state is also, Department of Health is ordering that all staffing at adult homes and nursing homes be at 150% of standard shift levels, and the staff that comes in is prepared to stay for 48 to 72 hours. In a situation like this, you prepare for the worst and you hope for the best. We've had a truly qualified and professional team that has been working together and has been preparing for this situation for days. The county executives have been through this a number of times, and they've handled it extraordinarily well. Joseph Lhota and General Murphy are truly professionals on the state side, so I don't think you can have a better, more experienced team dealing with this situation. In some ways, I wish we were less experienced in dealing with these situations than we actually are. It seems like there's been a frequency that is higher than desired. So we're doing everything we can. And now we are, I think we're taking the prudent actions, and we're waiting to see what actually happens with the storm. We need citizens to also act prudently. It's common sense. As you heard from the county executives, if you need things in the house, get them this morning. Get them early this afternoon, but get indoors, prepare your home, make sure the lawn equipment isn't going to go flying. It's all common sense. And don't take this lightly. I know that there's been a number of situations. I know that we get accustomed to hearing a weather forecast, and sometimes we're dubious about the weather forecast. But this is nothing to play with, and this is nothing to take lightly. So take it seriously. I know that we are. We'll see what Mother Nature has in store for us, and then whatever she has in store for us, we'll deal with it on the back end, and we'll deal with it together, as we always do as New Yorkers. I want to thank my colleagues today for joining with me. Any questions? It would be our pleasure to respond.
Governor Cuomo, what makes this the unprecedented monster that everybody's talking about? Why is it so different from Irene in your approach?
Well, we don't know what it is yet, right? So this is in anticipation. But when you look at some of the forecasts, they're suggesting a combination of events and a combination of weather patterns, which they liken to the perfect storm, which was about a combination of 2 or 3 different weather patterns colliding. And that's a possible scenario here, which then causes them the Frankenstorm scenario. Who knows what actually comes to pass? Even the best forecasters will tell you they can't say with certainty. But prudence is required by us, and we've been monitoring it. The number of actions we've been taking has been increasing as we're getting closer to the potential landfall, and that's what we're doing today. If the storm turns and moves off, great, really great. But if not, we'll be prepared.
Right now, there's a call for voluntary evacuations. At what point does it get too late to call for a mandatory evacuation?
We monitor the storm. We're monitoring it moment by moment, and it is very methodical. When it's at a certain point and it doesn't look like it's going to turn, we move to a mandatory. So yesterday was precautionary alert. This morning was a voluntary family and friends evacuation, and later today it could very well be a mandatory evacuation of those that reside in the floodplain. The perfect storm that they talk about, they're mostly concerned with tidal surge, and we want to get people out of the tidal surge area.
I spoke to Mayor Bloomberg this morning. He's also, as the county executive alluded, he has to make decisions about evacuations also. He'll be making those determinations later this morning, I believe.
When we talk about mass transit, what kind of damage are you preparing for? You're shutting down the system, obviously. How many days could it be out for?
I fully expect that we will do everything we can to get back up and running 12 hours after the storm ends. It's a function of how much power we have. If there are power outages, obviously you can't work the trains without electricity, combined with the fact that if we do in fact have anything underwater, we'll have to be able to deal and clean out any of those tunnels that are underwater. That'll have impact for both the Long Island Railroad, Metro North, as well as the city subway
So
system.
are we talking through Wednesday, people expect not to be able to use mass transit?
It's difficult to predict, but I do think Monday and Tuesday are going to be difficult days. Wednesday, I'm not sure we should have service, but whether it's at full complement of service, it'd be very difficult for me to say now. I don't know when this event will end and when the power issues will be corrected.
Getting a lot of questions from viewers actually calling in, they're worried about public works, the garbage being picked up, very simple things, but we know those things can turn to missiles. What's the plan for public works in both counties?
Well, stay tuned.
Because the storm instead.
We release it as we make those decisions. It is very possible that those people that typically pick out garbage will be reassigned to other duties.
Did
That's-
Mayor Bloomberg give any indication when he would make that decision on evacuation?
This morning.
If he does so, and also when was the decision made to suspend transit service?
I believe the mayor will make his decision later this morning. I chatted with him once again just before we came into this briefing. I think on the MTA decision, we've been monitoring it for days now. We've been talking about it almost on an hourly basis, and the closer you get to the point of landfall, the decision actually becomes more important, and we think at this time it's the prudent decision.
Do you recall the cost of Irene and what you kind of anticipate? Obviously, this is a projection question, but how costly this sort of storm could be?
Irene wound up, and that's why all these predictions you take with a grain of salt. If you remember with Tropical Storm Irene, all the projections were that New York City would be badly hit and Long Island would be badly hit. We did a lot of work in New York City and Long Island, but actually most of the damage was upstate New York, by far and away. And no one had really predicted the kind of damage that was going to be done in upstate New York. So even with all the sophistication we have, I take these things with a grain of salt. The Hurricane Irene damage, Tropical Storm Irene damage, depending on how you count, was in the billions of dollars. I mean, it was tremendous devastation in upstate New York. Communities in upstate New York are just recovering today from that storm.
We've heard, terms to describe this storm, unprecedented, a monster. Have you guys ever seen a storm like this?
The National Weather Service advised me they haven't, if it all lines up, as the governor alluded to, as the perfect storm, we haven't seen something like this in the last 30 years. That's what I was advised. And the tidal surges are much greater than that we experienced during Tropical Storm Irene, at least for Long Island, with predictions in the 6 to 11 feet area of tidal surge. So that's very alarming, and it's why we're taking it very, very seriously and being prepared.
Now, power is a huge issue. Last year, it was a nightmare for so many that were without power in some cases well over a week. 7 to 10 days was what we were hearing yesterday as a precaution for a lot of people. Is that growing now? What are people at home, what can they look at right now if they do lose power?
Well, look, it's hard to say because you don't know the extent of the damage. The last time we went through this, there were a lot of complaints about LIPA's response. I think that's what it was more than anything. That LIPA was not as responsive as they should have been, that the customer service was inadequate, they weren't answering telephones, nobody could get any information. And I think that was what was infuriating to people. You know, it's one thing if you say to someone, this is the situation, and this is what it's going to take, and it's going to be 4 days, it's going to be 3 days, whatever it's going to be. But at least if they know, I think people are more understanding. New Yorkers, God bless them, you know, we deal with a lot. But give us the facts and talk to me, and I want to understand. And I think what happened with LIPA was they couldn't get the information, or they got faulty information, and they didn't know, and then they couldn't plan their lives. So we've talked to LIPA about that at length and on many levels. Trust me on that. And they heard us after the last storm, and we're going to have a monitor from the state monitor LIPA's actions all through this storm.
Can you describe the
Talk about that
criteria that the
strategy.
bridges would be closed?
If the weather dictates, then on a case-by-case basis, we would make those
Are
determinations.
we talking about wind?
Wind primarily.
Is there a mile per hour limit that we're talking about?
Yes.
60 miles an
Yes.
hour.
60?
No.
Yeah. At 39 miles an hour or above, you'll start to see required slowdowns. If you get the 6 sustained winds of 60 miles an hour or more, the bridge will close.
But that's why, guys, the general message is you don't need to be out and driving around in this, right? You don't need to be figuring out when the bridge is closed, is it 59 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour? You want to stay home, be prepared, enjoy the family, read a book, but you don't need to be on the roads in the middle of this.
Talking about these
Okay.
evacuations, they're voluntary right now. My
Right.
last question for you, if you were living in one of those areas, you know the infrastructure best, Governor, would you decide to stay, or would you take the voluntary evacuation and go with your family?
I would err on the side of caution, especially with my family, and I would do the voluntary evacuation now. Okay? Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.